One for sorrow, two for joy, three for a girl and four a boy, five for silver, six for gold, seven a secret never told. Hello and welcome once more to Mattanory. You may have noticed I have a sign which I made my own little hands. Very proud of that. I'll try to carry on doing some stories as much as you want it. That story was about the magpie. I'm sure most of you probably know that. But this is a secret that is going to be told. It's about the magpie's nest. Do you see, once upon a time, a very long time ago, birds didn't make nests. It just hung about in trees and on sort of boulders and rocks and hopped about on the ground. And when it came to their laying eggs, they obviously had nowhere to put them, so they would lay them on the branches in trees, on boulders and rocks, and on the ground. So as you can probably imagine, not many survived. So one day Magpie was thinking, as she was a very cunning and clever bird, she thought, there must be a better way of laying eggs in a way that I can raise a brood and then not roll away or get broken or eaten. So she thought, and she was up in the high trees and looked down to the forest floor and saw lots of twigs and branches all around. So she flew down, gathered as many as she could in her beak, and then flew back up into a tree and wove them together to form a nice round platform. Pleased with herself, she landed in the middle of it. The nest was not as comfortable as she'd hoped. All the knobbly steps kept poking her about ruthlessly, in the wing and in the tummy and other places you could imagine, but let's not talk about those. Magpie decided that this was not the nest for her. But Crow, you see, she'd been watching what Magpie was doing and landed on the nest. She found it perfectly suited to her. And to this day, Crow has been making her nest exactly the same way. She weaves branches together to form a shallow platform. Magpie thought and thought about what she could find to make her nest softer. She wanted to make the perfect, comfortable nest. Aha, she said, flying down to the riverbank. Mud is nice and soft. That's what I'll make my nest with. So back up into a tree, Magpie again made a simple platform out of sticks woven together. Then she flew down, scooped a beakful of mud, which she plopped down on her platform of sticks. And she did this over and over again until she had a nice thick cake of mud. It looked very comfortable. But when she landed on the nest, it wasn't very comfortable at all. The mud was far too wet and gloopy, and it stuck to her feathers. She didn't like this at all. Magpie decided it is not the nest for her. But Songthrush was watching what Magpie was doing and came up with an idea. She waited for the mud to dry a little bit and then landed in the middle of the mud cake, and using her big belly she began to shape that mud into a smooth round bowl. To this day, the Songthrush has been making a nest out of sticks and mud. Magpie thought and thought about what she could do to make a most comfortable nest. Aha, she thought, and she flew down to a patch of long, dried-up grass. I can weave my nest out of grass and straw and little tiny twigs. So that's what she did. When she was done, the nest looked lovely and tidy and tiny. She tried to land in it, but it was just too small. Magpie had to give it up. Then she realized this was not the nest for her. But Blackbird, she had been watching what Magpie was doing and thought that the nest was perfect for her to raise her small family. To this day, you can probably guess this, Blackbird makes her nest by weaving together long pieces of grass and thin twigs. Magpie thought that maybe we should be happier if she had a really, really big nest and she could show off to all the other birds. It would give her lots of room for all her eggs to raise. So what she did, she flew about all of the forest, picking up the longest sticks she could find and that she could carry. And she wove them together into a huge platform. It looked wonderful, so spacious. She imagined how jealous the other birds would be to now she had such a humongous nest. And she landed in the middle of it quite proudly. As soon as she did that, one of the twigs on the far side of the nest popped out of place. Magpie's a perfectionist, so she popped over and popped it back in again. As soon as she did that, on the other side of the nest, pop, the twig came undone again, so she had to pop over and try and put it back together again. Now this kept happening, so she decided this is far too much work. I can't be doing this and fixing it all the time. I have to keep hopping backwards and forwards and I haven't got time to raise my family. So Magpie soon decided this is far too much work to make a nest out of. But Owl, who had been watching what Magpie was doing, thought the nest looked like a perfect place to raise her little owlets. To this day, this is how Owl makes her nest. Magpie thought and thought and thought all day about how to make the most comfortable, perfect nest. It began to rain. I know what's missing, she said. None of the nests I've made so far have a roof on them. If I had a roof, everything would be exactly right and perfect. So, first she made a platform of sticks. Then, working very carefully, she built up walls and wove together a roof. And she left a hole in one of the walls just big enough for her to slip through. Inside was cosy and dry, but all the bare sticks were really, really uncomfortable. So she had to come up with a better plan. But Long-tailed Tit, who had been watching, thought that that type of dome nest would be absolutely perfect for her little family. So she wove together a tiny dome of twigs. But then she gathered lichen from the trees and rocks and covered every inch of her nest with it. It kept out the wind and the rain beautifully. And to this day, Long-tailed Tit, she makes her nest this exact same way. But meanwhile, Magpie hadn't given up. She was a very determined bird. She was busy finding things to make this nest the most comfortable it can be. She flew here and there, and she collected moss, grass, dried leaves, sheep's wool, and anything else she could find, just to make it more snug and warm for her eggs. She even pulled out some of her own feathers from her own breast to try and make it comfortable for her little brood. And did you know, to this day, Magpie, she makes a domed nest out of sticks, lines it with all sorts of things, but not just moss and feathers, but also scraps of yarn, cloth, pieces of cardboard, sometimes people's washing. But she is still trying to make the perfect nest. Thank you.